गुरवे गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। गुरवे सर्वलोकानां विशेषैकगुरोगणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। क्रतुण्डमहाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभः निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। व्यासं अष्टनप्तारं शक्ते भद्रमकल्मषं पराशरात्मज वन्दे शुकदातं तपोनिधिं व्यासाय विष्णुरूपाय व्यासरूपाय विष्णुमहे नमो वै ब्रह्मणदेवासिष्ठाय नमो नमः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्. So we were looking at Sanatsujata Parva in Udhyoga Parva. So Sanatsujata, the Rishi Sanatsujata came to Dhritarashtra after Vidura's prayers, and Dhritarashtra was asking him the questions about Paramatma, Atma-jnana. So he was asking, he trying to understand Paramatma, and he was, because Vidura said he cannot explain those things and it has to be done by Brahmana, and that's why he says that, okay, I will explain. And Sanatsujata was explaining to Dhritarashtra's questions. He was answering those questions. So we'll look at that, continue that discussion today. So Dhritarashtra asks Sanatsujata, saying that the people who know the Vedas, the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samveda, whether those knowledge of Vedas, whether that destroys the sin that person commits. So if somebody who knows the Vedas, whether that sins are destroyed by the knowledge of Vedas they have. Sanatsujata says that the person who is not whose senses are not controlled, he is not going to be rescued even by the actions that involving Samveda, Rigveda, Veda, or any Veda mantras will not rescue them. So Vedas will not rescue a person, even if person chants Vedic mantras and things like that. Still, if his senses are not controlled, then that's of no use. So he says that, but on the other hand, the Vedas will give up on, even though he's chanting the Vedic mantras and he has knowledge, he he has learned those Vedas, that knowledge will not remain with him. So then Dhritarashtra says, if Vedas themselves are not competent to rescue somebody from these sins, then why people say that Brahmanas who know the Vedas are capable of destroying the sins? So why does it always say that Brahmanas are capable of destroying the sins? Because they know the Vedas. So here there is two parts. Vedas, one is Rugyaju Sama, that's what's mentioned here. The other is Veda is knowledge. Okay, so Sanatsujata again looks at this from two angles. One is purely chanting the Vedas. Okay, so learning how to chant Vedas and reciting those Vedic mantras. The second one is knowledge of that Veda. Okay, so when we say Vedic knowledge, that means understanding the Paramatma. So if one does not have the senses under control, that knowledge will not be there. That's what he said in the first question. Now, Dhritarashtra is asking the similar question, but he is asking from the angle of saying that somebody who is chanting mantras, those Brahmanas are said to be capable of destroying sins. Why you're saying they're not? Then Sanatsujata responds that this entire creation has come from the Paramatma, and the Vedas also points that everything is created by Paramatma. So this entire universe is created by him, but he is not attached to anything that any of this is creation. He is independent of that. So that Paramatma, it is for that attaining that Paramatma that sacrifices, asceticism, all these have been given. Okay, so all those things are there to attain that Paramatma, to realize that Paramatma. So what he is saying is the Rigveda Sama Vedas are means to attaining that Paramatma. Once you attain that, then the Vedas, that means that person is capable of destroying the sins. Okay, so there is no sins attached to that such a person who understands Paramatma. He is not at all attached to any sins, and that person is capable of that sins are completely destroyed by that knowledge, and that through that knowledge only he attains Paramatma, and that knowledge itself destroys all the sins. So here he is saying that that realization has to come. It is not just knowing something, that realization has to come. And then he says that the person who expects something, and that person who goes after the fruits, that person will come back to this region after. So once one takes birth, if you do some sacrifice or whatever it is with a desiring some fruits out of it, then that person will get a birth again. But on the other hand, those people, those brahmanas who are engaged, doing all the ascetic practices, they, with the attention, with the aim of only acquiring that Brahma-jnana, that Paramatma's knowledge, they can attain any regions, anything they want, but their wish is only to attain that Paramatma's knowledge. Then Dhritarashtra asked that how a ascetic, the if we are doing, say here it talks about ascetic austerities. Okay, so sometimes it's how it is successful, how it is unsuccessful, same kind of thing. When someone does it, sometimes it gives results, sometimes it doesn't give results. So whether any puja or prata or whatever one does, right? So or even sacrifices it. Okay, so large scale sacrifice one does, some attains benefits from it, some do not. Why is that? Why the difference? Sanatsujata responds saying that the asceticism which is not stained by desire and other faults is capable of giving that Paramatma's Brahma-jnana, that Atma-jnana, that realization, that moksha. That's the that's the only way. So, but on the other hand, if the asceticism is stained by vanity or want of true devotion, that means it does not have devotion in it, then it will be regarded as unsuccessful. So if one controls their senses without desires, without any thoughts, one purely does the asceticism because one has to do it as a karma. So this is what Gita karma, Krishna says, karma sannyasa. Okay, so you do the actions because you have, that's your duty to do. Okay, so then he talks about yoga and other things. So here Sanatsujata summarizes the same thing here, saying that without desire, do your actions. Those will be successful. That will take you to Atma-jnana, that will realization. But on the other hand, if one does with vanity, because to show off, I'm doing this vrata, I'm doing that puja, I'm doing that whatever, okay, penance, then without devotion, just because show off or expecting some desires out of it, then that considered as unsuccessful. Here again, unsuccessful, one may benefit from doing those things, okay, but the discussion topic here is Brahma-jnana, Atma-jnana, realizing that Paramatma, right? So that realization will not come. So as previously said, by doing the sacrifices, even if it is for whatever reason, okay, with the desire, say I want children, I want wealth, I want that, I want this. With that, if one does some sacrifices or asceticism, follows some strict things, then they will get benefit. But what Sanasujata is calling is unsuccessful is realization of that Paramatma, Brahman is not going to happen in those cases because you will end up with repeated cycles of birth and so you will attain those merits and then go to heaven, enjoy, and then fall back to earth and then get another birth. So that life cycle continues. So he says that it is only by asceticism that one can know Brahman, Paramatma, Atma-jnana, one can attain only through that, and through that only one can attain immortality. So again, immortality here, not talking about the body. Okay, one has God, so that means one is going to live forever. It is once that Atma-jnana comes, that person, that Atma attains immortality. That means there is no death for this. Because why there is no death? Because there is no rebirth. Okay, so that's why it's immortal. So Dhritarashtra then asks, I've listened to everything what you have said about asceticism that's unstained by faults and things like that. Uh, I've I realized all this mystery that you have told me. But tell me about the asceticism that is stained by faults. So what are those faults that stain the asceticism? Because without desires and things, you said is the asceticism one lead to Brahman immortality, right? So what are the things that stain the what are the faults when one does follow any ritual or anything? So what are those faults? Sanatsujata says there are 12, including anger, and 13, and also there are 13 kinds of wickedness that are faults of asceticism. Okay. Those 12 are anger, lust, avarice, ignorance of right and wrong, discontent, cruelty, malice, vanity, grief, love of pleasure, envy, speaking ill of others, and these are the uh, general faults that there. So these 12 are the faults that's also there, and these 12 should always be avoided. Any one of these that exist, whether it is anger, lust, avarice, ignore having all the 12 in one person. Okay, there may be people who are having all these 12, but even if Sanatsujata what says that even if one exists, in a person, that destroys that asceticism. So if somebody is angry or envy or is speaking ill of others or malice or vanity or anything, then it destroys that asceticism that one is following. So that's the destruction. So that's the cause of the destruction. So he says that the one's own superiority, desires of enjoying others' wives, humiliating others from excess pride, wrathfulness, fickleness, refusing to maintain those of worthy being maintained. These six are the wicked things. Again, so he said there are uh, faults and wickedness, right? So the wickedness are these are the ones. So always going and telling I am superior. Okay, I know this, I am superior. And enjoying others' wives. So that's also not good. Humiliating others from excess pride, anger, fickleness, refusing to maintain those worthy to be maintained. Again, supporting those who should be supported. So all these are wickedness that always bring the sinful things to people, and that's why destroy the merits. Then he says that the one that regards gratification of lust to be one's life's aims, that's one that is exceedingly proud, the one who is grieves having given away something. So if he gives some gift and then say, oh, I wanted to keep that one, but I gave that away. Okay, so in a gift, in a dana, if you give away something, okay, so a cow or a land or gold or whatever, okay, whatever, even simple things you give away and then say, I wanted to keep it. Okay, so if you feel like that, and the person who never spends his wealth and the one that persecutes his subjects by uh, exalting hateful taxes. So there is too much taxing the people, the kings, and the one that delights in humiliation of others. So if somebody is humiliated, you start enjoying it. The one who hates his own wives. So these seven are also called wicked. Okay, so we talked about the six type of wicked in previously. Now these seven, so total 13 or the wicked 12 faults he said previously. Okay. Then he talks about the practices of 12 things that constitute the practice of Brahmanas. They are righteousness, truth, which is the ahimsa, and also truthful in speech. So truth here means two things. Self-restraint, asceticism, delight in happiness of others, modesty, forbearance, love for others, sacrifices, gifts, perseverance, knowledge of the scriptures. So these 12 are the practice of Brahmana. And the one who succeeds in acquiring all 12 becomes competent to know Brahman. But even having 2 or 3 or even 1, he should be regarded as heavenly prosperity. So that person, even if one having self-restraint or one having modesty or love for others or gifts or knowledge of scriptures or any one of these, if one has, that Brahmana is considered still a great Brahmana. He is a uh, heavenly prosperity. So that means he is such a great Brahmana. But having all 12, that means he is the superior. He is the Brahma knowing Brahmana. Then he talks about moksha. So what leads to moksha? There are 3 things he says. One is self-restraint, dhamma, and then renunciation. And then he talks about knowledge in self, knowledge of self. So self is Atma. So Atma-jnana, renunciation, sannyasa, and then dhamma. So these 3 things, self-restraint, lead to emancipation. They all lead to moksha. So the Brahmanas that of knowledgeable Brahmanas say that these attributes in which truth predominates. So that means they are in which Paramatma resides. So the one having these 3 attributes realizes that Brahman. So now he talks about these 3 elements: self-restraint, renunciation, and knowledge of Atma. So self-restraint is constituted by 8 virtues. So breaches and non-observance of ordained acts and omissions. So falsehood, malice, lust, wealth, love of sensual pleasures, anger, grief, thirst, avarice, deceit, joy in the misery of others, envy, injuring others, regret, aversion from pious acts, forgetfulness of duty, calumniating or slandering others, and vanity. The person who is freed from these 8 things is said to be the righteous one, and he is the self-restrained one. These 8 faults are called madha. Again, self-restraint is dhamma. The opposite of that is madha. So, and both in words, if you read backwards, dhamma, madha, self-restraint, madha, and then self-restraint, dhamma, and then pride is madha. So then renunciation again of 6 kinds, and he talks about that now, and he says that the reverse of those 6, again, renunciation, anything that of 6 types of renunciation, anything that opposite of that again is called, those faults are called madha. So total madha or pride becomes 8 related to self-restraint and 6 related to renunciation. Those total become go by the name of madha. So what are those renunciation items? He talks about 6 kinds of renunciation, and they are: the first is never experiencing joy on occasions of prosperity. This is very difficult, right? So when something good happens, not experiencing a joy on this occasion. So the person who is completely renounced, he is detached from happiness and sorrows. That's why he never enjoys those. He is not at all attached to any of these things, and that's why he does not experience joy even when the prosperity comes, good things come, he does not jump in joy. And second thing is abandonment of sacrifices, prayers, and pious acts. This is very strange, right? So the person renouncing means he abandons sacrifices, prayers, pious acts, and all these things. So what does he do then? Is he become a wicked person? He does not do sacrifices, prayers, and pious acts. No, there is what in Gita Krishna mentions as nishkarma, that not doing any karma, right? So he karmas completely. He gives up all the actions that's needed. So once one realizes that renounces that sannyasa, takes sannyasa, he gives up all the actions. So he does not do any of the sacrifices, and his focus is purely on the Brahma-jnana, attaining that Brahma-jnana. Then The third one is abandonment of desires and withdrawing from this world. So world here is again worldly pleasures. Okay, so all the things that attach to this world, all the objects that attached, abandonment of all that he he should do. That's the renunciation. Third thing. Fourth thing is one should not grieve or suffer. So it is kind of a similar to what the first one is. First one said never jumping in joy when the prosperity comes. Similarly, the opposite is when not should not grieve or suffer. Okay, so even if one's actions fail, one's possessions go away, all these things, wealth go away, disappears, everything, then still one should not, it should not, one should not feel the pain. So that's the renunciation because he's not attached to the wealth or possessions or family or anything. Such a person is a sannyasi. Then fifth one is not soliciting even one's sons, wives, and others. That may be very dear. So again, so not attached to any of those sons, wives, and others. So that attachment has been abandoned. So given up on those things. That's the renunciation. Sixth is giving away to a deserving person who solicits. So if one comes asking for something, giving to whatever one has, giving that to that person is the sannyasi's again duty. So these are the six things that lead to that are the sign of sannyasis renunciation characters. And then he says the opposite of this, not giving away things, attachment to the family, grieving and suffering when difficult things come, attachment, having desires of all the worldly objects, continuous of sacrifices, prayers, and pious acts with desires, and then experiencing joy in the times of prosperity. All these things are considered as mother. So then he says that by these, again, one acquires Atma-jnana, but the Atma-jnana involves 8 qualities. Okay, so attaining Atma-jnana includes 8 qualities. Those are truth, meditation, dhyana, distinct of subject and object. So what is your object? What is your subject? So again, we will look at this in Gita when we start Gita sessions. What should be the subject and object? Okay, so then capacity for drawing inferences, differences. What's the differentiation between good and bad? Withdrawal from the world. Again, no attachment, never taking what belongs to others, practicing of brahmacharya vows, and non-acceptance of gifts. So all these 8 things result in Atma-jnana. So these are the qualities one should have to look for in Atma-jnana. So it says that these are the faults one should avoid. Then one should try to follow these things. Then it results in the Atma-jnana. So he says that just as Atma-jnana has 8 virtues, 8 things, it also has opposite of this is 8 faults, and these faults should be avoided. So the one that is liberated from the 5 senses, mind, past, and future becomes happy. So the person who is not at all attached to the worldly pleasures and things like that, always thinking about evil of others and those kind of things, such a person becomes happy. Happy here means he realizes Paramatma. He gets that Atma Jnana, and he advises Dhritarashtra that let your soul also be devoted to truth. So he says that truth here is Satya. So Satya, the only one truth is Paramatma. So Sanatsujata tells Dhritarashtra that you also focus on that and not this greed and everything you have. Give up on all these things, focus on that. And he says that because all the words, everything is established in that truth, and self-control, renunciation, Atma-jnana are said to have truth as the foremost attribute. So truth is the important thing. That's why follow that satya, follow that. Avoiding these faults, one should practice asceticism here in this life. One should practice, then only it will lead to that. So then he says that the truth should be the woe of righteous people. Asceticism that is dissociated from the false, endues with these virtues, becomes a source of great prosperity. And then he says that I will briefly tell you about the sin destroying and sacred subject that you asked. I have just told you all this about Atma-jnana, about liberating from birth, death, and discrepitude. Liberating from that, I have told you whatever you asked, I have told you all that. Then Dhritarashtra asks him, saying that Vedas and Puranas, they declare that Paramatma is to be this universe consists of everything. He is the soul, he is the Paramatma, he is the Paramatma. But some people says that there are 4 devatas who are supreme, and some say there are 3, some say there are 2, some say there are only 1. And there are other Brahmanas, others think that Brahman is the only one that exists. There is nothing else. Okay. So which of these is true? So again, if we look at our dharma, we speak of many devatas, right? So Ganesha, Vishnu, Shiva, Durga, Surya, many other devatas. And then even those devatas, Narayana, if we take, there are many different forms we worship. Krishna, Rama, Parashurama, many other things, right? Narasimha and many other things. So Dhritarashtra asks, people say there are many devatas, and some say 2, some say 5, whatever the number. What is the truth here? Which one should be, one should have the, which one I should focus and which ones I should know? The what is the knowledge of that Paramatma gives us? Sanatsujata says that there is only one Brahman. There is only one Brahman. So not Brahma, Brahman. So Brahman is Paramatma, okay, which is the truth itself. So that's the only one. It is from ignorance that one, that Godheads have been conceived to be diverse. So it is only that ignorance. Ignorance here is ajnana. Ajnana means not knowing, self-knowledge. Atma-jnana. Anything that's anyone without Atma-jnana is considered ignore here. Ignorance. Okay, with ignorance, with ajnana. So those people are considered multiple devatas. So then the question comes to us, right? So in our mind, so that means I'm worshipping multiple devatas. So does that mean I'm ignorant? Yes. Okay, because I don't have that Atma-jnana. Once one has Atma-jnana, as we've seen previously, that person only, he renounces everything. He's not focusing on sacrifices or anything, any of these things, and completely renounced and completely detached from everything. And that person is only realization comes to that person about Brahman. And Sanatsujata here says that the person who gives up all the things and desires of happiness and engages in study and practices charity and sacrifices and all those things without that Paramatma's knowledge, then only that's the only reason he does those things. So in the desire of happiness, he does all those things: study, charity, sacrifices, and everything. But once one realizes that he is not attached to any of these things, so that's why one should some people perform or attain the objects of sacrifice by meditation, some by recite japa, the recitation of particular prayers, some by actions, by doing homas and sacrifices and things like that. But the person who is seeking Brahman through truth obtains his desired object at home. So that means he does not have to do any of these things. He simply has to give up everything, renounce everything, and detach himself with self-control. The 3 things mentioned, right? So self-control, then that leads to renunciation, that leads to Atma-jnana. So that's the only thing. So those are the three things that no. So it says that they those that have knowledge of Atma-jnana, and for them that truth, that Paramatma is the highest object of pursuit. So we said object and subject. So the object here, the one should pursue is the Paramatma, that truth, the ultimate truth. The fruits of knowledge, it says, are visible. Asceticism yields fruits hereafter. So one follows the asceticism, any of these things, whether meditation or japa or anything, so or sacrifices and things like that, fruits will come after this. But a brahmana who without knowledge and asceticism has only read much only what's to be known as a great reader. So but therefore never think that one can be a Brahman, that means knowing of Paramatma by reading scripture. So the question again goes back to Dhritarashtra's previous question on whether knowing Vedas is leads to sins removal. That means sins complete removal is through Atma-jnana. And Atma-jnana, just by reading those scriptures, one never attains, it is one just never becomes a Brahman knowing. So that one never attains that Atma-jnana. But one, on the other hand, one should be known to be possessed of Atma-jnana who does not deviate from truth. Truth is Paramatma. So one who does not deviate from Paramatma should be considered as knowledge, knower of the Brahman. So it says that the Vedas, Atharvana Vedas, in the was recited in the great sages by the great sages, and are known by the name as Chandas. Chandas, as you know, is the meter or the uh, structure of the mantras. So, and those Chandas, again, knowing that one uh, again enjoys the sacrifice, does the sacrifices and things like that, and he is considered as the knower of the for the means of obtaining the Brahman. So understanding the Brahman, one follows that Veda. So effectively saying follow these sacrifices and things like that as a means to attain that Paramatma. But on the other hand, one having understood the Vedas and have not have the understood the Paramatma, for that person there is nothing else to do. So there is nothing else for him to aim for. So the only thing he focuses is on that truth. That's the ultimate truth. That's the supreme truth, the Paramatma. The one who has read the Vedas does not know Paramatma, uh, which is knowable by them, but the one who knows the Vedas and understands the Paramatma is the one who actually the knower of the Vedas. So if one says I know the Vedas but does not have that Atma-jnana, that person is not considered as a Veda knower, but on the other hand, one who is knowing, has that realization is the uh, Veda knower. Then again, he says that uh, the by mind alone, one cannot acquire knowledge of self or not self. So not self is anything that's false. So Maya, so anything this world. Okay, so the knowledge of the differentiation of Atma, Paramatma, and the rest is cannot acquire by mind alone, and that's why one should focus on these karmas, doing these karmas, and through the karmas only one can acquire those things. So he says that the one should know the person to be a, of knowing of Brahman, or knowing of the having this Atma-jnana, who gives the clears the doubts of the others, having himself mastered in all the doubts, his own doubts, and possessed of the knowledge of Atma-jnana. So again, Atma-jnana can only be given by the person who has realized it. If you have not realized it, it's very difficult to give you, because one has to experience Atma-jnana, and that's the only way, and that's why it's very difficult. He says is that that's the only person who can give that diksha. Very rarely it can be found in. So again, the person you you can look for that Paramatma everywhere in all the direction, but you may never find anywhere. Uh, but in those people who regard this body as the Paramatma. Okay, so one who regards this body as the Paramatma will never realize anything because they are attached to that body. But the Muni who is practices meditation and who has the knowledge uh, of Paramatma, who works towards that understanding that Paramatma, that Brahman, is the considered should be considered as the superior one, and he is the one who attains the Brahmajnana. So that Paramatma realization of that Paramatma, he attains that. Then he says the person who sees all the regions as present before his eyes is said to be possessed of universal knowledge. So that means he realizes everything that's happening. That means he realizes that Paramatma, and because of that, he does not differentiate anything that's in front of him or away from him. So everything looks to him through those eyes. He sees everything, and he stays in truth and knows the Brahman is said to be Brahmana, and a Brahmana possessed of universal knowledge. So such a Brahmana, knowing all these things, is said to be the true Brahmana. So Sanat Kumara, Sanatsujata continues his discourse. He then explains to ask Dhritarashtra, asks him about treating of the attainment of Brahman, origin of the universe, and all those things. He also tells him that worldly desires, what are they, and what are why, therefore, how one attains certain things and things like that. He asks those questions, and we'll look at those Sanasujata's response in the next time when it comes. Any questions?